Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark's Backyard Birds. Today's topic is one of the most unique and ask about birds there is, and then in the naturalist world, the northern flicker. And we are going to go through its life history, kind of, and the name, the unique features of it, its distribution, all that. So, hang on. Here we go. We're going to talk about the northern flicker. First off, let me put a picture up. And, you know, I've worked in this business for 40 years and they're in nature centers and naturalists and wildlife biologist positions and things. And I used to make a bet whenever they would call back to the naturalist office when I worked for the conservation department here in Missouri. And they'd say, Mark, bird question on line one. And I would lean over to the phone, put my hands on the phone. I'd look up at the other people in the office. I'd say, guarantee is northern flicker. Pick up the phone. Hi, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That bird's called a yellow shafted or northern flicker. Yes, absolutely. And going to the concert. This happened over and over again. And the reason why is because this is a very striking bird. It catches your eye. There's lots of features that do that. Because when you look at the bird you think, oh, well, it's looks like a woodpecker. Well, it doesn't have the name woodpecker in it. And, the name is northern flicker or yellow shafted flicker in this form. And they will often fool people because they will see them on the ground. One of their nicknames is ant birds because they do eat ants and they'll be on the ground. They use their very long tongue, which is extremely long. And if you've seen my hummingbird program, I talk about how birds with very long tongues store them. Well, flickers on the extreme cases, their tongue is so long for diving down and reaching and darting down and getting ants in an anthill that when they bring that tongue in, it actually wraps up the muscle, pulls it up on the top of the skull, and then it goes in and out. And it almost goes all the way over to their nostrils across the top of their skull. That's how long their tongue is. And it's barbed so that they dart that tongue in like they're doing here on the ground and getting ants, and they pull them out and eat them. Well, okay, a woodpecker on the ground doesn't make sense to people, so it gets their attention, and so that's one thing. But then when they fly, you see this big white tail flash. They have a bright white rump, and so you're seeing this woodpecker on the ground, which is already startling. And then when it takes off to fly, you see this bright white wing patch that you don't see when the wings are folded. So it's exposed in flight, and a lot of times they're flying away from you because you flushed it. And that's another thing that really draws people's attention. They're like, oh my gosh, what's that? So, okay, we're going to go back. We're going to back up a little bit to the beginning, and we're going to go back to the bird itself. The northern flicker. Now, if you've got an old field guide and you look in there, you will see this bird called a yellow shafted flicker, and this is the color form in the eastern 2/3 of the U.S., so pretty much east of the Rocky Mountains. And you folks down in Alabama, I know it's the state bird of Alabama, and they call them yellowhammers. So if you're a yellowhammer, an Alabama yellowhammer, that means you're from Alabama, and that they're obviously known for that. So, but if you're on your old field guide, it says yellow shafted flicker, and on the same page, it will have the red shafted flicker, which is shown from the Rocky Mountains to the west. So you people out west will say, well, my birds don't have yellow under their wings. Let's show you a picture here. It kind of shows that better. You can see the yellow under the tail, and it's in the yellow in the wings of the yellow shafted flicker. And this is a great example of them, how they feed at bird feeders. This is on a finch feeder, and they use that long tongue to dart in there to get those fine sunflower chips. This is Carrie's yard, and he's feeding on that. And the difference you'll notice here, because we're going to talk about this too, is male and female. And you notice this guy has a black mustache or a black malar stripe right there. That means this is a male. Where this lady here does not have that black malar stripe. And so this is a female northern flicker or female yellow shafted flicker. And those are, we call that sexual dimorphism. You can tell them apart, and that by the absence or presence of that malar stripe. Now, you looked in your book and you said, well, what about these red shafted flickers? Well, In the western U.S., instead of that yellow under the tail, this beautiful red under their tails. And when they spread their wings, you can see the red in there. It's kind of a hard to see in this picture from underneath. This is more for the tail, the rump, but you can see the red underneath the wing feathers and the red under the tail. Now, why did they lump them together into the northern flicker instead of yellow shafted and red shafted? Okay, you had divergent populations. They had, the ones in the west were red was a better survival color, and in the east yellow was, and they bred for years and years and years and years and thousands of years. Well, with urbanization, when they started settling the plains and towns became, and they started clearing timber, things like that, these birds kind of met out like in western Kansas and eastern Colorado out in the plains. And the reds and the yellows, whenever they overlapped, they would interbreed and they would produce kind of some funny looking offspring. The faces would be different. Like the red shafted has a gray face with the red malar, where that yellow shafted had a brown face with a black malar. Well, whenever the two would have hybrids, they'd be all kind of mixed up color forms like that. And so they said, oh, okay, they're not really species, they're color forms. You got a red color form and a yellow color form. Well, now over time, now that overlap zone, and they've been interbreeding now for a long time, now we're seeing that yellows are selecting for yellows and reds are selecting for reds. And so there's a lot of belief that in the not too distant future, they're going to get split back out again. They will be two different species, red shafted and yellow shafted. And it may take a long time, but there's a lot of us who hope that will happen. And they're fun birds. Like you said, you can attract them to your bird feeders. They'll eat sunflower chips. They eat suet. They eat peanuts. They're very fun, and they're big. I mean, they're big and impressive birds, and they do, they're cavity nesters like all woodpeckers, and they drill holes. But you can coax them into a nest box. They're flicker boxes, and the thing is, they need to be big enough for a flicker. So, like a bluebird box, obviously is too small; they could never fit in it. They couldn't. They may drill the hole out and try to get in it, but then they realize it's too small. So it needs to be a good sized box, like 12 to 16 inches deep from the hole, and the hole needs to be about a 2.5-inch diameter hole on it. So they'll use them. One of the worst things, and as big and impressive and aggressive as a flicker can be, they often drill holes, and I've heard it way too many times reported to me that a group of starlings came along and just harassed the flicker to death. Even though they're much smaller, they just run them off, and the flickers abandon their cavities they drilled, and they have to go somewhere else and drill another cavity. And more of that in urbanization, in urban areas, that's getting tough for starlings and other cavity nesting birds to survive against the starlings, and we find them nesting in more remote places than we used to, which is a sad thing. So yellow shafted flicker, red shafted flicker. Now there's one other in your field guide. If you look at it, you'll have northern flicker, and you will see what's called a gilded flicker. Gilded flickers are desert flickers, as I call them. They are almost exclusive to Arizona, Southwest Arizona, the deserts of Arizona, but also a little bit into California, a little bit up maybe into Nevada. But they really are a desert restricted species, and they're kind of an in between. Now they have the red malar like the red shafted flicker, and the gray face like a red shafted flicker, but their under tail feathers and their under wing feathers are yellow, like the yellow shafted flicker. So they've got characteristics of both, but they are their own population. Again, they're kind of isolated due to their the desert requirements. So you guys down there in the desert Southwest, and look at the size of that bill. That is a really whomping bill on that gilded flicker. So you have a third member of this flicker group we have in North America. And there are other flickers around the world, but these are the three we have here, or the two, if you look at it, if you don't look at the red and yellow as separate groups, but northern and gilded. But red shafted, yellow shafted, and gilded is how I learned it, and that's how I think of it when I think of flickers. But sure are an absolute fascinating bird for a lot of people. They generate tons of questions and they eat lots of insects. Like I said, they love ants. There's no doubt about that. But they also drill into trees for grubs and in dead wood and underwood and around. And yes, sometimes they do hit on people's woodside houses. Whole videos on why they do that and how to help prevent it. But they are searching for food, or they're searching to drill for a place to live, or they're drilling to be loud to attract a female. So a great member of the woodpecker family. That was a great suggestion for that program. I really appreciate you sending that in. If you would, please send in more. Give us a like, give us a share. And if you haven't subscribed already, we hope you sure do. So thank you so much. Until next time, come by, let's talk birds.